The world is a dangerous place. At least that is what I always say to my daughter when she insists on playing outside instead of doing something more productive like knitting or alphabetizing. And it's true, the world is a dangerous place. One time I almost dropped a piece of cake on my foot, and there was this one incident where I forgot where I parked my car for 3 whole minutes. The world can be a scary place for a dad, but thankfully we have the police force to protect us from harm. In fact, just last week, I was walking home from Osco by myself at night because my wife made me walk to the store and back for some more milk. And luckily I didn't get murdered. So I owe the police department a big thank you. But unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I might have gotten us all in a little bit of trouble. It was a Tuesday, which meant two things: garbage day and Taco Bell for lunch. So I sent my wife a text while I was driving my daughter to school saying, "Can you please pick up some taco meat on your way home? We are having tacos tonight." And then she texted back, "Okay, but you need to hurry up with the school run because I got to get to work and I left Jimmy at home alone again today." Now, if you've never had to stay home alone as a kid, you don't know what a terrible burden that can be. So I felt bad and I tried to make it up to my son by letting him pick the movie we watch on family night. Normally, I try to instill some culture in my kids and get them to watch the classics. You know, like Gone with the Wind or Taxi Driver. But he wanted to watch something called Pause or Play. So I let him pick that. And after picking out his meal of chicken nuggets and broccoli, he settled down on the couch and I popped the movie into the DVD player. Pause or Play was about a kid who lived in a house with his dad and mom and older sister, and they were always fighting. So he escaped into an alternate reality where he was a superhero, and he could only access this world by pressing pause on the TV remote. Whenever he did that, he would transform into this guy with a cape who could fly and shoot lightning out of his hands. At first, the special effects were pretty impressive, but then you realized it was just a guy pretending to fly with a bedsheet and cardboard wings. Still, it was a fun movie until the end, because in the final scene, the main character finally grew some courage and confronted his father about all the yelling and fighting. And then his dad took off his glasses, looked directly into the camera, and said, "You know, I used to be a police officer, but now I am retired because I have a drinking problem and I couldn't handle my anger." And then he poured himself a glass of whiskey and started crying. I told my son, "Don't worry, buddy. That's just a movie. Dads are supposed to pour themselves a glass of whiskey and cry at sad Hallmark movies." But he didn't seem convinced. He kept staring at me, so I changed the subject and we went to talk about the amazing tacos my wife makes. "Did you put the beans in the fridge?" "Course I did. They're in the fridge right next to the ground beef." "Oh, good. Because I love mixing them together and eating them straight from the container." We went to our usual spot to eat our tacos, but my daughter wasn't really hungry. She said her stomach was feeling funny, so we let her go home early. Then as soon as we got inside, she ran to the bathroom and threw up all over the toilet. I remember thinking, great, now the toilet's gonna smell like dirty socks forever. But then my wife had an idea. She said maybe we should take her to the hospital just to be safe. And I knew she was right. You never know how many lead pipes there are in the water supply around here. So I grabbed her and we raced to the emergency room, where they hooked her up to M4 and gave her a shot in the butt. That was the first time I ever saw my daughter cry. And I remember thinking, wow, this sucks. If only there was some way we could stop this pain and suffering. Then the nurse came back in and said everything seemed fine and we could take her home. But then my wife noticed that the clock on the wall said 9:32 p.m. And she asked the nurse, "Isn't it too late for kids to be out this late?" To which the nurse responded, "Nope, not at all. This is prime time." I knew she was talking about how the best shows on TV come on after p.m., but I thought this deserved a closer look. So I brought up my phone and I searched online. And sure enough, this website said 9:34 was a peak time for kids to get sick. I ran back to the nurse's station and I said, "Hey, my daughter's only getting sick because yours truly gave her a shot in the butt." Then the nurse said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, this website says that kids get sick at 9:34 no matter what. So maybe you gave her the shot at 9:34 on purpose. You know, so you could get some overtime." Then the nurse walked away and I thought to myself, man, These nurses are so heartless. All they care about is money. After we got my daughter home, my wife and I were sitting on the couch watching TV and I kept thinking about the nurse's cold, dead eyes and how they glistened in the fluorescent light as she walked away. So I turned to my wife and I said, "You know, that nurse was trying to make a quick buck off of our daughter's misery," and she agreed, so we decided to call the police. That is when I got on my computer and I typed in the address of the hospital and I sent an anonymous tip to the police department. And my note read, "There is a sick and possibly corrupt nurse working the children's ward at Mercy Hospital who is giving kids unnecessary shots in the butt so she can line her own pockets." I was proud of myself for coming up with such a detailed description, but I was even more proud when I saw the news report about the police raid at Mercy Hospital. They ended up shutting down the children's ward for a week while they investigated. Of course, I never told anyone that I was the one who tipped off the cops, and I especially didn't tell my wife. After all, I just wanted to do the right thing. I didn't want any recognition or praise. But then one night while we were eating macaroni and cheese in silence, my daughter piped up and she said, "You know, I wish I could give the police a nice anonymous tip about how my school is serving mystery meat in the cafeteria." Then she looked at me with innocent eyes and she said, "Dad, what's a tip?" I lied and I said, "A tip is when someone tries to frame a nurse for doing something they didn't do." Then she went back to her show and I thought to myself, "Man, I hope she never finds out that I'm the one who wrote that letter." But you know what? Maybe I kind of wanted her to know. After all, I couldn't bear the weight of my own lie. And I needed my daughter to understand that even though I sometimes feel helpless in the face of giant corporations and faceless government agencies, I am a force to be reckoned with. The end.